Hi, I'm Dave Vickers and welcome to the Photo Show. In today's episode we're going to do another Lightroom tutorial, and what we're going to look at today is creating a black and white within Lightroom. So black and whites are brilliant. The reason I like black and white is sometimes colour can be distracting in an image, and black and white always has that classic look. It's almost a timeless kind of thing. So I've opened up this image here that was taken in Paris. It's by Notre Dame on the banks of the Seine, and I just came across some people doing some balancing acrobatics on a Sunday morning, so I took a shot and I thought this would make a really nice black and white image. First thing I'm going to do is to crop the image here. So I'm going to bring in our crop tool at the top here. You can press R for a shortcut. That's going to bring in the crop tool, and I'm going to straighten this image up. You can use the little level there, but I'm just going to use my eye and straighten up the cathedral in the background there. Okay, that's looking good. I'm going to press enter, and that's now made the crop. Now this is a raw file. I could have worked on this as a colour image first and then transferred it into a black and white, but I thought it'd be a good idea if we just started with the raw file and went straight in and created a black and white from it. So coming over here to our right hand side, we're in the basic panel here, and you can see at the moment it says it's in colour, that's lit up. So we're going to come across, and the next option here is black and white. So if I click that, immediately you can see that first off it's turned the image into a monochrome image, and we've lost the vibrancy and saturation from our basics panel. They're now greyed out, so we can't use those because there's no colour information for us to work on. So let's have a look here. So first thing, we can adjust our colour temperature, and you see by scrolling the colour temperature it's brightening up or flattening the image out, but I think we'll leave the color temperature as it is. So we'll double click that back to its default. Tint will have an effect. It's basically affecting the mid-tones of the image. If we pull it up this way, it's brightening up the mid-tones and flattening it out. If we pull it down this way, it's darkening the mid-tones down. So let's darken the mid-tones down a little bit to start with. Exposure I'm going to leave for a second, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So let's go down to highlights. So let's drop our highlights a bit here. If we bring that all the way down, you can see that it's darkening down the highlights. But let's pick a point where there's still some brightness in there, but we're taking out a lot of the highlights. So that's there. Now we've got our shadow slider, and we can bring it to the left hand side and deepen the shadows, or bring it to the right hand side and lighten the shadows. And I think because it's a black and white, I like my black and whites to be quite contrasty. I like to have, you know, deep blacks and bright whites to give the black and white a bit of punch. So I'm going to bring the shadows down a touch there to round about there. Next we have our whites and our blacks. Now again, it works exactly the same as if you're working on a colour image. If you hold down your Alt or Option key while clicking on that, the screen will go black, and you can start to drag the slider, and areas will start to appear when they are pure white. And really I just want a few dots of white within the image, something like that. Let it go. And then we've got the black slider, and we can do exactly the same here. You can hold down your Alt or Option key, the screen will go white this time, and as you bring your slider to the left, you can start to see areas that will be pure black. Okay, let's leave it like that for a second. So let's just stop for a moment and just see where we've got to. If we press the backslash key, that's going to show us where our image started from. So that's the full color image with no processing applied to it at all. That's with a few small moves within the basic panel here. We haven't, as I said, we haven't even touched the exposure or the contrast. We've just done a slight drop on the tint, adjusted the highlights, the shadows, the whites and the blacks. Now let's go to our exposure slider, and we can start to have a more global effect. If we bring it to the left hand side, it's going to brighten the image up. If we bring it to the left hand side, it's going to darken the image down. And I think about there. Now I've done that, I'm going to open up the shadows a little bit just to bring a bit more detail back in. Contrast is the next area I would look at, and I like my images to be quite contrasty. As I said, I like to have a bit of a difference between the blacks and whites. If we pull the contrast to the left hand side, it flattens the image out. The difference between the blacks and the whites becomes a lot less, and you're getting a lot more grey. So this is what I would call a flatter looking image. You've got less contrast within the image. If we start to pull it the other way, as we go higher, you can see now there's much more of a definition between the blacks and the whites in the image. But I think that's too far, and I'm going to pull it back a little bit to around +10. The last slider we've got left in our basics panel now is clarity. And again, if we pull our clarity to the left hand side, it's going to start to give this soft, dreamy, unreal looking effect to it. If we put it to the right hand side, it's going to start to do the opposite and put too much detail in. So clarity in black and white or color is definitely somewhere where you can make or break an image. So we're going to add a little bit of clarity. Let's go around 15 on the clarity. Okay, so all I've done here is I've just used the basic panel so far, and if we press our / key, that's where the image started off as full color with no editing, and that's where we've got to just by using the basics panel within Lightroom to create a nice black and white. If we now scroll down to the HSL color panel, it will automatically now open up to the black and white option on this. And as you can see here, we've now got an area called black and white mix. And we've got red, orange, yellow, green, aqua, blue, purple, and magenta. And although this is a monochrome image, it still contains the color information. So this is going to allow us to adjust individual colors within the image as a monochrome black and white photograph. As an example, if we look at these areas here, the bushes and the trees, now obviously they're not green in this image because we turned it into a monochrome, but in the color image they are green. So if we go to our green slider and start to pull that up, you can see now that the green areas are brightening up. If we darken it down, the green areas are darkening down. So we can have very finite adjustments to each area of the image. If we zoom in now, let's click on the image and zoom into 100%. And that should give us a few options. Now, let's start at the top. Now, the reds, orange and yellows are mainly going to affect skin tones. Skin tones are mainly made up of these three colors. So if we use the red slider here and begin to bring that to the left-hand side, you can start to see that areas of the skin is darkening down. The orange will have the same effect. So if we bring the orange to the right, to the left-hand side, you can see that the skin tones are darkening down. And again, we'll try the yellows, and the yellows are doing the same. Now, the yellows are having more effect. This is a bright sunlit image, so obviously the yellow is being the more dominant color within the skin tones here. But let's just get a balance here so we've got the skin tones looking how we want them. Okay, so I'd say I'm happy with how the skin tones look now. As a black and white, they look realistic. We've got nice shadows on the skin. The skin tone's looking even all the way across, and that's looking like a great thing for the skin tone. So let's zoom out this image now. So click back in the image and go back to the full screen. And let's have a look at what some of the other areas will do. Now, we've already shown that the green here will affect the trees. So let's bring a bit of detail back into the trees and the bushes in the background there using the green. We now have the aqua. Now the aqua and the blue are going to affect the sky. The main area of this image that would have aqua and blue in it will be the sky. So if we pull the aqua to the right hand side, it's going to brighten up the sky. But as you can see, it's having very little effect on the rest of the image. The more we move this, if we move it to the left-hand side, it's darkening down the sky. If we move it to the right-hand side, it's lightening up the sky. And I quite like a darker sky in black and white images. So let's bring that down a little bit there, and we've got the blue now as well. And as you can see, to the right-hand side, we'll lighten the sky. And as we bring this down, it's going to darken the sky down. You can go to a really extreme level like that, but I kind of like it just about there. Okay, and the final two sliders are the purple and magenta. Now, sometimes it's difficult to tell if there are colours within an image, but the best way is to move the slider and watch the image. Now the magenta, I'm moving the slider, and the only area that I can see it is affecting is here. The mat that the guy is laying on here is a purple colour. And as you see, as we darken that down, that has a slight effect on the mat there. So we'll bring that down a touch as well. And the magenta, there's nothing really of magenta in the image. You can see I'm moving the slider around and it's having zero effect. So I'm going to double click that to put it back to its default. So there we go. Just by using the basic panel and the black and white panel in the HSL, we can turn what we've done off there. We've got a little on off here. So let's turn that panel off. And you can see the difference that's made to the sky and the skin tones. That's before, that's after. So that's the basic black and white we created just using the basic panel above. That's the effect we've had by using the black and white channels here, the various color channels, to have a more detailed effect on the image. So let's press our backslash key. That's where the image started off. That's where we've got to now. So really simply, we've gone from a full color image to a black and white image. And again, you can adjust all of these to your heart's content. You can, darken down the sky more if you wanted to. You can lighten up the skin tones more if you wanted to. All of this can be adjusted to get a really detailed quality black and white image. So I hope that's helped. For now, I'm Dave Vickers. This is The Photo Show. See you next time.